My name is Abigail Carter, 31 years old, and I never thought I would hear my own father tell me not to come back. Yet there I was, Christmas dinner falling silent around me, turkey growing cold on festive plates as those devastating words hung in the air. I packed my bags without a word that night, tears streaming down my face. The next morning, I made a decision that would change everything. I cut them off from the money I had been providing them for years. Before you continue watching, let me know where you are tuning in from. And please hit that like and subscribe button if family drama stories resonate with you. I should probably start by explaining how we got to that awful Christmas dinner. For the past 7 years, I have been the primary financial support for my family. I work in finance, specifically investment banking. And through a combination of hard work, strategic career moves, and admittedly some lucky market timing, I became what most would consider wealthy by my 29th birthday. My portfolio crossed the $1 million mark 2 years ago, and my annual income is now in the mid-six figures. I never expected to be the successful one in my family, but life has a way of surprising you. My father, William Carter, worked at the same manufacturing plant for 28 years before they closed down and moved operations overseas. He was 52 at the time, with no college degree and specialized skills that suddenly became obsolete. Despite his best efforts, the only jobs he could find paid less than half his previous salary. His pride took a massive hit, especially since he had always been the provider, the strong one, the man who worked 3 jobs when we were little to make sure we never went hungry. Around the same time Dad lost his job, Mom was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. The chronic pain condition made it difficult for her to continue her part-time job as a school secretary. The medical bills started piling up, especially since their insurance coverage through Dad's work disappeared along with his job. They were too young for Medicare but too cash-strapped to afford decent private insurance. That was when I stepped in. I had just received a substantial promotion and bonus, and it seemed natural to help the people who had sacrificed so much for me growing up. At first, it was just covering a medical bill here, helping with groceries there. But eventually, it evolved into a regular arrangement where I sent them $3,000 every month to help with the mortgage, utilities, and Mom's medications. My siblings had different reactions to this arrangement. My younger sister Hannah, who is 26, resented it deeply. She had dropped out of community college and was working various retail jobs, never quite finding her footing. In her eyes, my financial success made her failures more apparent, and my helping our parents highlighted what she couldn't do. Every family gathering became an exercise in navigating her passive-aggressive comments about my fancy job and showing off with expensive gifts. My brother Nathan, 28, took a more neutral stance publicly. He had completed a teaching degree but was struggling with student loans and the modest salary of a high school history teacher. He still lived at home with our parents, ostensibly to help care for Mom, but the free rent was undoubtedly a factor. He never criticized my help openly, but I could sense his discomfort with the family's dependence on me. We came from a proudly working-class background. Dad had been a union man who valued self-sufficiency and hard work above all else. Mom was the daughter of immigrants who had instilled in her the importance of family loyalty and sacrifice. They had raised us with solid middle-class values, emphasizing education as the path to security. None of us had expected the economic rug to be pulled out from under our parents in their 50s, least of all my father. I could see how my financial help wounded his pride. Each month when I transferred the money, I would get a stiff thank you call from him, his voice tight with what I recognized as suppressed shame. Mom was more gracious about accepting help, but even she would sometimes make comments about when things get back to normal, as if their financial independence was just around the corner, despite years of evidence to the contrary. Christmas had always been the centerpiece of our family traditions. Mom would decorate every inch of their modest three-bedroom ranch house in Boise, Idaho, and Dad would spend weeks selecting and wrapping thoughtful gifts, even in the leanest years. The holiday meal was a production that brought out Mom's Polish heritage with 12 traditional dishes representing the 12 apostles. Even as tensions grew in our family, Christmas remained sacred ground, a time when grievances were temporarily set aside. This year, I had hoped things would be different, better. I had brought extravagant gifts, including a vacation package for my parents' upcoming 35th anniversary. I had also brought an extra $5,000 in cash as a holiday bonus of sorts, thinking it might help with the roof repair they had been postponing. I wanted to be generous, to use my good fortune to make their lives easier. The tension started early on Christmas Eve when I arrived. Hannah made a show of comparing her small handmade gifts with my professionally wrapped packages. Mom kept making comments about how I shouldn't have wasted my money on them. Dad was quieter than usual, starting his holiday drinking earlier than I remembered from previous years. I tried my best to keep the peace, complimenting Hannah's creativity with her gifts, helping Mom in the kitchen despite her protests that I would find her methods too old-fashioned compared to my big city ways, and engaging Dad in conversations about topics he enjoyed. I was walking on eggshells, as I had been for years, desperately trying to be both successful and humble, generous but not showy, helpful without being condescending. By the time we sat down to Christmas dinner, the undercurrents of tension were impossible to ignore. Mom winced with pain as she lifted the turkey but waved away my offers to help. Hannah rolled her eyes when I suggested a new recipe for cranberry sauce. Dad had already gone through several beers, his cheeks ruddy and his laugh a little too loud. And still I kept up the cheerful facade, determined to make this Christmas special, to buy a brief period of harmony with my presents and my gifts. I had no idea how spectacularly my hopes were about to implode. Christmas dinner began pleasantly enough. The dining room table was beautifully set with Mom's best china and the silverware that only came out for special occasions. The food looked and smelled amazing, the culmination of 2 days of preparation. Dad had put on a button-up shirt, something I rarely saw him wear anymore, and Mom had done her hair the way she used to when I was a child. Even Hannah had made an effort, wearing the sweater I had sent her for her birthday instead of her usual sweatshirt. The first 20 minutes went smoothly as we passed dishes around and complimented Mom's cooking. We talked about safe topics, the unseasonably warm December we were having, the neighbors' over-the-top light display, the funny Christmas card from Aunt Susan with her 5 cats all wearing Santa hats. I started to relax, thinking maybe this year really would be different. "How's the new position treating you, Abigail?" Nathan asked as he reached for seconds of mashed potatoes. I smiled, grateful for his interest. "It's going well. Challenging, but in a good way. I just closed a major account last week that I've been working on for months." "Did they give you another big bonus for that?" Hannah asked, her tone just slightly pointed. "The compensation structure is complicated," I said, trying to downplay it. "But yes, there will be a performance incentive." Dad cleared his throat. "That's great, sweetheart. Real proud of you climbing that corporate ladder." There was something in his voice I couldn't quite identify. Something that made me uneasy. Despite the positive words, it felt forced. I quickly tried to change the subject. "How about you, Nathan? How are your students doing this year?" We managed another 15 minutes of safer conversation about Nathan's teaching challenges and some funny stories about his students. Mom talked about her garden club's plans for spring, and I asked genuine questions, relieved to have steered us to calmer waters. Then Mom mentioned the roof. "We've got a small leak in the guest room now," she said with a sigh. "Your father put a bucket under it, but we really need to get it fixed before winter gets worse." "Have you called any roofers for quotes?" I asked. Dad stiffened slightly. Been making some calls, waiting for better weather. My medication costs went up again, too, Mom added. That new insurance plan isn't covering as much as they promised. I saw my opening to help. I actually brought some extra money for you guys. For the roof and whatever else you need. Consider it part of your Christmas gift. The silence that followed was heavy. Dad put down his fork deliberately. We don't need charity, he said, his voice low. It's not charity, Dad. It's family helping family. You guys helped me through college. Now I can help you. Hannah snorted. Must be nice to throw money around. I turned to her, trying to keep my composure. I'm not throwing anything around. I'm trying to help with necessary expenses. We know you're trying to help, honey, Mom interjected. We just don't want to be a burden. You're not a burden, I insisted. I'm fortunate to be in a position to help. I want to share my success with you. Dad took a long drink of his beer, his fourth of the evening. Sounds to me like you think your success means you know what's best for everyone. The tension in the room ratcheted up several notches. I could feel my heart rate increasing. That's not what I meant at all, I said carefully. Hannah jumped back in. You've always thought you were better than us, even before the money. Now you just have the cash to prove it. That's completely unfair, I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. Is it? Hannah pushed. Is that why Roger left? Because he got tired of you thinking you were better than everyone else? The mention of my ex-fiancé felt like a slap. Roger and I had broken up 8 months earlier after he accused me of being too focused on my career and not enough on our relationship. It was still a raw wound. Hannah, that's enough, Nathan warned, finally intervening. What? I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. I saw my mother's face crumple as she looked down at her plate. Dad was gripping his beer bottle so tightly I thought it might break. Nathan looked uncomfortable, but said nothing more. I don't think that's fair, I finally said. I'm trying to help because I care about you all. The money isn't about buying affection. Dad stood up, swaying slightly from the alcohol. Well, you did, and I'm done with it. We're done with it. We don't need your charity with strings attached. James, please sit down, Mom pleaded. No, he shouted, his face flushed with anger and humiliation. I want her to understand. Don't come back until you learn some respect. Don't come back until you can be a daughter instead of a benefactor. The silence that followed was absolute. I could hear the clock ticking in the hallway, the faint sound of Christmas music from the neighbor's house, the blood rushing in my ears. No one moved. No one spoke. My father's words hung in the air between us like a physical barrier. I carefully placed my napkin beside my plate and stood up. I'm sorry you feel that way, I managed to say, my voice barely audible. I should go. No one protested. No one followed as I walked woodenly up to my old bedroom and mechanically packed my overnight bag. I could hear hushed, angry voices from the dining room, but couldn't make out the words. It didn't matter. The message had been delivered loud and clear. As I carried my bag downstairs, I paused in the dining room doorway. They all looked up, their faces a mixture of anger, embarrassment, and in my mother's case, distress. But no one said a word to stop me. Merry Christmas, I said flatly. Then turned and walked out the door into the cold December night, leaving behind the family that had just rejected me and the remnants of a holiday meal that had turned to ash. The 20-minute drive to the nearest hotel passed in a blur. I operated on autopilot, my hands gripping the steering wheel, my vision occasionally blurring with tears I refused to let fall. The Holiday Inn had one room left, a small mercy on Christmas night. The desk clerk took in my red eyes and smudged makeup with a sympathetic glance, but didn't ask questions. Once inside the anonymous hotel room with its generic artwork and too-firm bed, I finally allowed myself to break down. The sobs came from somewhere deep and primal, shaking my entire body as I curled up on the bed, still wearing my Christmas sweater and good slacks. Years of tension, resentment, and hurt poured out of me in waves until my throat was raw and my eyes swollen. As the initial storm of emotion subsided, memories began to flood in. Dad teaching me to ride a bike, running alongside me with his hand steadying the seat. Dad working an overnight security job, then coming home to make us breakfast before catching a few hours of sleep and heading to his second job. Dad beaming with pride at my high school graduation, telling everyone within earshot that I was going to college on a scholarship. When had it all changed? When had I transformed from his pride and joy to someone he wanted out of his life? Was it truly the money? Or had there been fractures in our relationship long before that I had been too blind to see? My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. He didn't mean it. He's been under so much stress. Please come back tomorrow when things calm down. No apology, no acknowledgement of how deeply his words had hurt me. Just an excuse, and a request for me to pretend it never happened. It was the same pattern we had followed for years, sweeping conflict under the rug instead of addressing it. Nathan texted next. That was rough. Dad was way out of line, but you know how he gets when his pride is hurt. Give it a few days. Again, an acknowledgement that Dad was wrong, but with an implicit expectation that I would eventually come around, make peace, continue the dysfunctional cycle. I opened Instagram to distract myself and immediately regretted it. Hannah had posted a vague but pointed status. Some people think money can replace genuine connection and respect. Spoiler alert, it can't. Family should come first, always. Several relatives had already liked it, taking sides without knowing the full story. I turned off my phone and stared at the ceiling of my hotel room, feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. The next morning, my phone rang from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Abigail. It was my mother's voice. How did you get this number? That doesn't matter. I'm calling because I want to help you. Help me? You threw me out. There was a pause. If you give up the baby for adoption, you can come home. I sat up so fast I got dizzy. What did you just say? You're not ready to be a mother. You have no job, no home. We can help you find a good family, people who can provide everything a child needs, and then you can come back. Restart your career. Put this behind you. My baby is not a mistake to be erased, I said, my voice shaking with rage. We're trying to help you, Abigail. You're throwing your life away for a man who won't even claim you publicly. Don't you see how this looks? I hung up. My hands were trembling. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. Instead, I called Michael. They want me to give up the baby, I told him. My own mother just asked me to give up my baby so I can come home and pretend none of this happened. That's not going to happen, Michael said firmly. You're keeping this baby, and I'm going to help you. Move in with me, Abigail. Please. You need stability, and I can provide that. I agreed. Not because I wanted to, but because I was out of options. I moved into Michael's apartment the next day. It was beautiful, modern, with huge windows and expensive furniture. He gave me the spare bedroom and told me to make myself at home, but I felt like a guest, like I was imposing, like at any moment he might change his mind and ask me to leave too. 2 weeks later, a process server found me at Michael's apartment. Abigail Carter? He asked. Yes. He handed me a thick envelope. You've been served. Inside was a legal petition. William and Elizabeth Carter were petitioning the court for grandparents' rights. They claimed I was an unfit mother, unable to provide stable housing or financial support, suffering from emotional instability. They were asking the court to grant them custody of my baby when he or she was born. I called Daniel Harris, the attorney from legal aid that Jessica had recommended. He came to meet me that afternoon. "This is serious," he said after reviewing the documents. "In Washington, grandparents can petition for rights if they can prove it's in the best interest of the child, and unfortunately, they have a case. You're unemployed. You don't have permanent housing, and they'll argue that you've been unstable since your pregnancy. But I have a law degree from Stanford. Which means nothing if you can't get a job. Look, Abigail, I'll help you fight this, but you need to understand what we're up against. Your parents have resources, they have stability, and they have a lawyer who's going to make you look as bad as possible." I felt sick. Can they actually win? It's possible. We need to build your case, show that you're capable, that you have support, that you're thinking clearly about the future. I looked at Michael, who'd been sitting quietly during this whole conversation. "If we go public about you being the father, would that help?" Michael hesitated. "It would help your case," he admitted. "But my custody hearing with Laura is in 2 weeks. If this comes out now, I'll lose my kids. So I have to choose between protecting myself and protecting you." No one said anything. I made my decision. "I can't let you lose your children because of me. We'll fight this without mentioning you." Daniel looked skeptical, but nodded. "Then we need to move fast. The hearing is in 3 weeks." The next 3 weeks were the hardest of my life. Daniel helped me build a case, but everything felt like we were fighting uphill. My parents had hired an expensive attorney who filed motion after motion, each one painting me as more unstable, more unfit, more irresponsible. I started working with Rachel Bennett's organization, New Beginnings Legal Fund. Rachel had reached out after seeing some mentions of my case online. She offered me a position as a junior attorney, helping women in custody battles. It didn't pay much, but it was something. It proved I could work, that I was thinking about my future, but the stress was killing me. At my 20-week prenatal appointment, the doctor took my blood pressure and frowned. "It's elevated," she said. "Have you been under stress?" I almost laughed. "Yes. You need to reduce your stress levels. This isn't good for the baby or for you. I'm going to recommend modified bed rest, nothing strenuous, plenty of sleep, a calm environment." "I don't have a calm environment," I wanted to say. Instead, I nodded and promised to take it easy. But how could I take it easy when my parents were trying to take my baby? When I had a court date looming, when every day felt like another battle I was losing. Sarah came to visit one evening. She took one look at me, and her face fell. "Abigail, you look terrible." "Thanks," I said weakly. "I'm serious. You've lost weight. You have circles under your eyes. This isn't healthy." "I know, but what am I supposed to do? Just give up?" "No, but you need to let people help you. Let Michael help. Let me help. You can't do this alone." "I'm not alone," I protested. But even as I said it, I knew it was a lie. I felt completely isolated. Michael was supportive, but he had his own life, his own problems. Sarah visited when she could, but she had a demanding job. Daniel was professional and capable, but he was my lawyer, not my friend. That night, around 11 I felt something wet and warm. I went to the bathroom and saw blood. Not a lot, but enough to make me panic. I called Michael, but his phone went to voicemail. He was in court, I remembered. Some big case that had him working. Late. I called Sarah. No answer. I called Daniel's office. Closed. I called 911. The paramedics arrived within 10 minutes. They were calm and professional, asking me questions, checking my vitals, helping me into the ambulance. At the hospital, a doctor examined me and did an ultrasound. The baby's heartbeat is strong, she said, but you're showing signs of stress-related complications. We need to keep you here for observation, at least for tonight. I spent 3 days in the hospital. The bleeding stopped, and the doctors said the baby was fine, but they were worried about me. My blood pressure was still high. I wasn't eating enough. I was, in the words of one doctor, running myself into the ground. Michael finally showed up on the second day with flowers and apologies. "I'm so sorry," he said. "The custody hearing was yesterday. I couldn't leave." "And how did it go?" I asked, not sure I wanted to know. "I won. Joint custody, 50-50 split. It's what I wanted." I should have been happy for him. Instead, I felt resentful. He'd won his battle while I was lying in a hospital bed fighting mine alone. "Abigail," he said, sitting down beside the bed. "Let me tell you something. Laura is Judge Stephen Johnson's daughter." I stared at him. "The judge who's handling my case?" "Yes. That's a conflict of interest. He can't oversee my case if he has a connection to you through his daughter." I filed a motion for recusal immediately. 2 days later, the response came back. Motion denied. Judge Johnson claimed there was no conflict because he didn't have a direct relationship with my parents. Technically, he was right. But everyone knew what was really happening. Laura hated Michael. Laura hated me. And her father was going to use his position to make sure I lost. Daniel tried to appeal, but there wasn't time. The hearing was in 1 week. And then things got worse. A blog post appeared online, written by someone anonymous. "Stanford law graduate gets pregnant, abandoned by family. What did she do?" The post was full of speculation and half-truths. It painted me as someone who must have done something terrible to deserve being kicked out. The comments were brutal. Some people defended me, but most were quick to judge. She probably cheated. What kind of daughter gets disowned? There has to be more to this story. I knew it was Hannah. It had to be. She was always good with social media. Always knew how to get attention. This was her way of controlling the narrative, of making sure people saw me the way our parents wanted them to see me. My mental health spiraled. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed at Michael's apartment, staring at the ceiling, wondering how I'd ended up here. A year ago, I'd been at Stanford, studying for finals, dreaming about my future as an attorney. Now I was unemployed, pregnant, fighting a custody battle against my own parents, and watching my life fall apart in real time. The doctor wanted to prescribe antidepressants, but I refused because of the pregnancy. Instead, she recommended therapy, meditation, anything to help me cope. But how do you meditate away the fact that your family wants to take your baby? How do you therapy your way out of systemic betrayal? I couldn't. So I just kept going day by day because what else could I do? The email came on a Tuesday morning. I almost deleted it, thinking it was spam. The subject line read, "I can help." The sender was Rachel Bennett. I'd been working with her organization for a few weeks, but we hadn't spoken much beyond professional matters. I opened the email. "Abigail, I saw your story online. I know what you're going through because I lived it 20 years ago. I was pregnant, my family abandoned me, and they tried to take my baby. I fought them, and I won. Let me help you. Call me." I called immediately. Rachel turned out to be in her late 40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. We met at a coffee shop near her office, and she told me her story. She'd gotten pregnant at 24, and her wealthy parents had been horrified. They'd tried everything to make her give up the baby or let them raise it. She'd fought them in court and won. Her son was now 21, a college graduate, happy and healthy. "I started this organization because I never want another woman to feel as alone as I did," Rachel said. And Abigail, you're not alone. I'm going to help you. Rachel did more than offer support. She hired an entire legal team to work on my case. They dug into my parents' background and found things that shocked me. My father had a record of workplace harassment from 15 years ago. He'd settled out of court, and it had been buried, but it was there. My mother had been hospitalized twice for depression, something she'd never told us kids about. They're not perfect, Daniel said when he presented the findings, and we can use that. They're trying to paint you as unstable, but they have their own history of mental health issues and questionable behavior. We interviewed people from my childhood, neighbors, teachers, friends' parents. Many of them remembered my parents as cold, demanding, and controlling. One of my high school teachers said she'd always worried about me, that I'd seemed under enormous pressure to be perfect. Your Honor, Daniel said during a prep session, my client's parents have demonstrated a pattern of controlling behavior and emotional abuse. They have their own mental health challenges that they've never addressed. They're not suitable guardians for this child. The case was coming together, but I still felt like I was drowning. Every day was a fight to keep my head above water. And then Michael made a decision that changed everything. He called a press conference. I'm here today to make a statement, he said, standing in front of a room full of reporters and cameras. I am the father of Abigail Carter's baby. I stand with her completely, and I want everyone to know that she is an intelligent, capable woman who will be an excellent mother. The treatment she's received from her family is unacceptable, and I'm proud to support her. The news exploded. Michael Carter, prominent attorney, publicly claims paternity of baby in custody battle. Laura was furious. She called him that night, screaming, threatening to reopen the custody case, but it was too late. Their agreement had been finalized. More importantly, Judge Johnson could no longer deny the conflict of interest. His daughter's ex-husband was the father of the baby in the case he was overseeing. Within 48 hours, the case was transferred to Judge Lena Martinez, a woman with a reputation for fairness and no connection to any of us. My parents were panicking. I could see it in the emergency motions their lawyer filed, trying to argue that Michael's involvement proved I was unstable, that I'd been having an affair with a married man. But Michael had documentation proving that he and Laura had separated 18 months before we met, that the divorce had been finalized before our relationship became serious. The new hearing date was set for 2 weeks away. Daniel felt confident. We have a good case, he said. Judge Martinez is fair. She'll see through your parents' manipulation. But then my father made a critical mistake. Michael received a phone call late one night. William didn't know Michael was recording it. You don't know what you're doing, William said, his voice thick with anger. I'll destroy you. I'll destroy both of you. I've been planning this for months, since I found out about you two. You think you can just waltz in and take her side? I'll make sure she never sees that baby. I'll prove she's unfit if it's the last thing I do. Michael stayed calm. You're threatening me, William. I'm promising you. I have connections. I have power. You're going to regret this. After the call ended, Michael immediately filed the recording with the court. It was legal in Washington, a one-party consent state, and it was damning. William had confessed to deliberately sabotaging my career, to planning this custody battle for months, to making threats against both of us. Daniel was ecstatic. This changes everything. He's confessed to malicious interference, to conspiracy. This isn't about what's best for the child. This is about control and revenge. Around the same time, my brother Nathan finally reached out. He called me, his voice shaky. Abigail, I'm so sorry. I should have stood up for you from the beginning. I was a coward. What changed your mind? I asked. I couldn't take it anymore. Watching what Dad's doing, what Mom's going along with. It's wrong, I want to help you. I'll testify if you need me to. Nathan told me things I'd never known. Our father had controlled him his entire life, dictated his career, his marriage, everything. Nathan had wanted to be an artist, but our father had forced him into finance. He'd wanted to marry his college girlfriend, but our father had disapproved because she came from a working-class family. Nathan had spent his entire life trying to please someone who could never be pleased. I'll testify about the emotional abuse, about the control, about everything, Nathan promised. You deserve to have your baby, Abigail, and I'm going to help make sure that happens. Even Elizabeth seemed to be wavering. She showed up at Michael's apartment one afternoon, alone, looking tired and older than I remembered. Can we talk? She asked. I let her in. She sat on the couch, her hands folded in her lap. I think we've made a mistake, she said quietly. Your father. He's been so angry and I got caught up in it. But seeing what's happening, seeing how far he's willing to go, I think maybe we were wrong. Maybe? I repeated. Mom, you told me to sleep on the streets. You told me to give up my baby. I know. She started crying. I know. And I'll regret it for the rest of my life. I don't know what I was thinking. Your father was so insistent, and I just went along with it. And now everything's falling apart. Have you left him? We're separated. I moved in with your aunt for now. I don't know what's going to happen, but I couldn't stay there anymore. She looked at me with red, swollen eyes. I don't expect you to forgive me, but please, Abigail, let me be part of my grandchild's life. When you're ready, I'll wait as long as you need. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to slam the door in her face, but another part, the part that remembered being a little girl and having my mother braid my hair, wanted to believe she meant it. I need time, I finally said. I can't just forget what you did. She nodded. I understand. I'll wait. A week before the hearing, William sent a letter. It was handwritten, 2 pages long. His handwriting was shaky, not like his usual precise script. Abigail, I'm sorry. I was wrong about everything. I let my pride destroy our family. I hope one day you can forgive me. Dad. I didn't respond. The hearing was held on a cold morning in January. I was 6 months pregnant now, my belly round and impossible to hide. I wore a maternity dress in navy blue, professional but comfortable. Daniel sat beside me at one table. Across the aisle, William and Elizabeth sat with their attorney, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit. Judge Elena Martinez entered, and we all stood. She was in her 50s, with short gray hair and sharp eyes. She sat down and reviewed the case file for a moment before looking up. This is a petition for grandparents' rights, she said. Mr. and Mrs. Carter are seeking custody of a child who hasn't been born yet on the grounds that the mother is unfit. Let's hear arguments. William's attorney went first. He presented their case methodically. Abigail Carter was unemployed for months after graduation. She had no stable housing. She was involved in a relationship with a recently divorced man. She showed signs of emotional instability. Daniel countered every point. Abigail Carter has a law degree from Stanford, one of the best law schools in the country. She now works with New Beginnings Legal Fund, helping women in crisis. She has stable housing with Michael Carter, her partner, who has publicly acknowledged paternity and committed to supporting both her and the child. As for emotional instability, she was under enormous stress from her parents' harassment and legal threats. Then came the testimonies. Nathan was first. He walked to the witness stand, nervous but determined. He testified about our childhood, about our father's controlling nature, about the emotional abuse he'd witnessed and experienced. My father would tell us we were never good enough, Nathan said. Nothing we did was right. Abigail graduated top of her class, And instead of being proud, he focused on one mistake. When I told him I wanted to study art, he said I was being foolish and forced me into finance. We lived in fear of disappointing him. William's attorney tried to discredit him. "You're just bitter because your life didn't turn out the way you wanted." "No," Nathan said firmly. "I'm telling the truth because my sister deserves better than what we got." Rachel Bennett testified next, speaking about my work with her organization and my character. Sarah testified about our friendship and how responsible I'd always been. Michael testified about our relationship, our plans for the future, his commitment to our family. Then came Elizabeth. William's attorney called her to the stand, expecting her to support their case. But Elizabeth looked at me as she was sworn in, and I saw something in her eyes: regret. "Mrs. Carter, do you believe your daughter is fit to be a mother?" the attorney asked. Elizabeth was quiet for a long moment. "I thought she had a good life with us. I thought we did everything right. But looking back, I realized we were too hard on her. We were too controlling. And when she needed us most, we abandoned her." The attorney looked stunned. "Mrs. Carter, that's not what we discussed." "I know, but I can't lie anymore." She took a breath. "Abigail is strong, intelligent, and capable. She'll be a good mother, better than I was." William's attorney quickly dismissed her, clearly thrown off script. Finally, William took the stand. Daniel questioned him about the recorded phone call, about his attempts to sabotage my career, about his motivations for seeking custody. "You said you'd been planning this for months," Daniel pointed out. "You admitted to blacklisting your daughter from law firms across Seattle. You made threats against both Abigail and Mr. Carter. This isn't about the child's welfare, is it, Mr. Carter?" William's face was red. "I was trying to protect my family's reputation." "By destroying your daughter's life?" "She made her choice. She chose to get involved with an inappropriate man, to get pregnant out of wedlock, to embarrass us." Daniel paced in front of the witness stand. "Mr. Carter was divorced when they met. There's nothing inappropriate about their relationship. The only inappropriate behavior here is yours. You used your influence to prevent your daughter from finding employment. You kicked her out of your home while she was pregnant. You filed a custody petition not because you care about this child, but because you want to punish Abigail for defying you." "That's not true," William protested, but his voice lacked conviction. Daniel pulled out another document. "Your Honor, we have evidence that Mr. Carter is facing financial difficulties. His firm is under investigation for fraud, and he may be terminated. We believe his real motivation for seeking custody is financial. Grandparents with custody can demand child support from biological parents. Mr. Carter is a wealthy man. Mr. Carter sees this child as a source of income." The courtroom went silent. Elizabeth turned to stare at William, her face pale. "Is this true?" she asked him. "William, were you using our grandchild for money?" William didn't answer. He just sat there, his face ashen. Judge Martinez held up her hand. "That's enough. This hearing is adjourned. I'll review the evidence and issue a ruling within the week." As we left the courtroom, Elizabeth caught up to me in the hallway. "I didn't know," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I swear to you, I didn't know he was planning to use the baby for money. I thought we were doing this because we cared." "Maybe you did care," I said, "but it doesn't change what you did." "I know." She wiped her eyes. "I'm filing for divorce. I can't be with someone who would do this." Hannah was standing nearby, watching. She didn't say anything, but she didn't walk away either. Maybe she was finally starting to understand what our father really was. Judge Martinez's ruling came 6 days later. Daniel called me with the news before the official documents arrived. "You won," he said. "Completely." The written decision was thorough. Judge Martinez had seen through every one of my parents' arguments. She noted the evidence of emotional abuse, the financial motivations, the malicious interference in my career. She wrote that William and Elizabeth Carter had demonstrated that their primary concern was control, not the welfare of the child. The petition for grandparents' rights was denied with prejudice, meaning they couldn't file again. Full parental rights remain with Abigail Carter, the decision concluded. The court finds her to be a capable, intelligent woman with adequate support systems in place and genuine love for her unborn child. I cried when I read it. Not sad tears, but relief. Michael held me while I sobbed into his shoulder, finally letting out months of fear and stress. "It's over," he kept saying. "You're safe. The baby's safe." The next few weeks were a blur of positive changes. I started working full-time at New Beginnings Legal Fund. Rachel promoted me to a senior position, trusting me with more complex cases. The work was fulfilling in a way I'd never experienced before. I was helping women who'd been where I was, fighting for their rights, their children, their futures. Michael and I found a rhythm. His kids from his first marriage came to visit, and while it was awkward at first, they gradually warmed up to me. His daughter, Sophie, who was 10, even seemed excited about having a baby sibling. His son, Ethan, who was 7, was less sure. But he came around when Michael explained that more family meant more love, not less. Nathan visited often, sometimes bringing his wife. He'd started seeing a therapist to work through his own issues with our father. He told me he felt lighter, freer, like he'd been carrying a weight his whole life and had finally been allowed to put it down. Hannah remained distant. She didn't call, didn't text, didn't acknowledge what had happened, but she also stopped posting negative things about me online. Maybe that was the best I could hope for right now. One afternoon in February, the doorbell rang. I was 8 months pregnant, moving slowly, my back aching. I opened the door to find Elizabeth standing there, holding a small gift bag. "I know I don't have the right to be here," she said, "but I wanted to bring this. You don't have to let me in. I can just leave it and go." I looked at her. She'd aged in the past few months. Her hair had more gray, her face more lines. She looked smaller, somehow diminished. "Come in," I said. We sat in the living room. She handed me the gift bag. Inside was a small stuffed elephant, soft and blue. "I made this," she said. "I used to crochet when you kids were little. I thought maybe I could make something for the baby." "It's beautiful," I said, and I meant it. "Abigail, I'm not asking you to forgive me. I know what I did was unforgivable, but I want you to know that I'm seeing a therapist. I'm working on understanding why I let your father control me for so long, why I didn't stand up for you when I should have. I'm trying to be better." "That's good, Mom. I hope it helps." She twisted her hands in her lap. "Your father and I are divorced now. The proceedings were quick because I didn't fight for anything. I just wanted out. He's facing charges at his company. I don't know what's going to happen to him." "How do you feel about that?" "Sad, angry, relieved. All of it." She looked at me. "I wasted so many years with someone who didn't deserve my loyalty, and I almost lost my daughter because of it." "You did lose me," I said quietly. "At least for a while." "I know. And if that's how it has to be, I'll accept it. But I hope someday you might let me back in, even just a little." "I need time," I said. "This has been the hardest year of my life, and a lot of that is because of choices you made. I can't just pretend it didn't happen." "I understand." She stood to leave, then paused at the door. "Whatever time you need, I'll wait. And, Abigail, I'm proud of you. I should have said that a long time ago, but I'm saying it now. You're strong, you're successful, and you're going to be an amazing mother." After she left, I sat holding the little blue elephant, thinking about forgiveness and family and what it meant to move forward. A week later, a letter arrived from William. It was brief, handwritten in shaky script that looked nothing like his usual precise penmanship. Abigail, I'm sorry. I was wrong about everything. I let my pride destroy our family. I hope one day you can forgive me. Dad. I didn't respond. Maybe someday I would, but not today. My daughter was born on March 15th, 3 weeks before my due date, but healthy and strong. We named her Charlotte Rachel, after Rachel Bennett, who'd helped save us both. She was perfect, with Michael's blue eyes and what the nurses said was my stubborn chin. Michael was there for the birth, holding my hand, crying when they placed Charlotte on my chest for the first time. Sarah came to the hospital with flowers and balloons. Nathan brought his wife and a giant teddy bear. Rachel stopped by with a basket full of baby essentials and a card that made me cry. Elizabeth asked if she could visit. I said yes, but only for a few minutes. She stood by the hospital bed, looking at Charlotte with tears in her eyes, but she didn't ask to hold her. She just looked. She's beautiful, Elizabeth whispered. You did good, Abigail. Thank you. She left after 5 minutes, respecting the boundary I'd set. In the months that followed, life found a new normal. I went back to work part-time, bringing Charlotte to the office when I needed to. New Beginnings Legal Fund had a nursery for exactly this reason. I took on cases, helped women fight for their rights, and found that my own experience made me better at my job. I understood what they were going through in a way no textbook could teach. Michael and I got married in a small ceremony that summer, just family and close friends. Nathan was there. Sarah was my maid of honor. Rachel gave a toast about new beginnings and second chances. Elizabeth came, but sat in the back, knowing her place. William did not attend. Looking back now, sitting in the nursery I decorated with so much hope, I could see the journey clearly. From that terrible dinner where my father called me a disgrace to this moment, holding my sleeping daughter. I'd traveled through fire. I'd lost my family and found a new one. I'd been broken and rebuilt myself stronger. The people who stand by you in your darkest moments, those are your real family. Blood might make you related, but loyalty and love make you family. I learned that strength isn't about never being afraid. It's about continuing to fight even when you're terrified, even when everything seems impossible. I learned that sometimes you have to let go of toxic people, even if they're family, to protect yourself and the people you love. And I learned that second chances aren't just for those who hurt you. They're for you too. A chance to start over, to build something better, to create the life you deserve. Charlotte stirred in her crib, making little baby noises. I picked her up, held her close, breathed in that perfect baby smell. We're going to be okay, I whispered to her. We have everything we need. And we did. Love, support, strength, and each other. That was enough. That was everything. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and protecting yourself? Have you faced a situation where standing up for yourself meant losing people you loved? What would you have done in my position? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might help someone else who's going through something similar. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about your own relationships, or gave you strength to face your own battles, please hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel for more stories about resilience, about people who fought impossible odds and came out stronger. Share this with someone who needs to hear about fighting back against impossible odds. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing that your dreams matter, even when others don't. I'm cheering for you. I believe in you. Now go show the world what you're made of. You've got this.